Welcome to Davos. For 1 week every January, 30,000 people descend on this small Swiss mountain resort for the annual World Economic Forum. We're talking presidents, prime ministers, and other VIPs rubbing elbows with titans of industry, powerful CEOs, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and activists, all building relationships and closing the deal.
The World Economic Forum meets every January in Davos. You will have heard of the expression Davos man. It refers to all the zillionaires and pop stars and popes and princes and politicians who meet every year to map out our futures. I'm sure you've heard of Bono. Well, next year's World Economic Forum at Davos has been pushed back to May in Lucerne, presumably because of COVID. But, and here's where you really need to pay attention, this year's Davos is very, very different to all the previous ones. The World Economic Forum, along with the United Nations, along with the International Monetary Fund, and along with any number of prominent globalist organizations and powerful individuals, including Prince Charles, together have jointly promised that the 2021 World Economic Forum will be used to introduce, via a vast network of connected big tech corporations, online activist movements, and compliant local and national governments, something they call the Great Reset. This isn't some Sky After Dark fantasy conspiracy theory. It is a global commitment they have made to use the panic and fear generated by the coronavirus as a means to reshape all our economies and laws and move to a new form of capitalism that focuses on net zero emissions. To use all the tools of COVID to tackle climate change. You might think this is a great thing. You might think this is a terrible thing. But what is unforgivable is for you not to think about it at all. If implemented successfully, the Great Reset will undeniably and deliberately have extreme and possibly dire repercussions. Ignorance is no excuse. Already, the Great Reset is being widely advertised on posters and in ads across the UK and Europe, and no doubt will be here before too long. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy is just one of their marketing slogans. So let me fill in the blanks for you. The plan involves replacing shareholders of big companies with stakeholders who happen to be left-wing bureaucrats and climate change zealots. Replacing mum and dad small businesses and private enterprises with big tech and big business. Mrs. Kafup's share portfolio is out. Greta Thunberg's zero emissions are in. Democracy and free enterprise go out the window. Totalitarian government control slides in through the back door. But remember, it's not only a great reset, it's a great deception. Because in order to get everyday people to surrender many of the rights and freedoms we currently take for granted, the repeatedly stated aim of these organizations is to deliberately use COVID as an excuse, to use all the political and authoritarian tools, as Prince Charles puts it, that are currently being used around the world to eradicate the virus, such as lockdowns, exclusion zones, forced closure of businesses, heavy fines, making protesting illegal, and so on, but now to eradicate carbon emissions. Those behind this scheme are adamant that there can be and never will be a return to normal, that life will never again be what it was prior to COVID. That is why they constantly talk about the new normal. But remember, this is not me saying this, lurking in the darkest corners of Sky News After Dark. This is them saying it, the people with the power and the means and the obsessional desire to do it. And they keep telling us again and again precisely what they have in store.
There is hope that we can transform the situation, but I'm afraid we are literally at the last hour, and there is real urgency for action.
And if it's still not clear, maybe Santa could pop this little gem into your Christmas stocking. The book written by World Economic Forum boss Klaus Schwab himself, setting out precisely how the most powerful forces in the world are lining up to use the COVID-19 crisis as a pretext for introducing a new climate change-focused one world economy that will strip away property rights and basic democratic rights.
The COVID-19 crisis has shown us that our old systems are not fit anymore for the 21st century. Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight severe virus, but to shape the system for the need for the post-corona era. We have a choice to remain passive, which would lead to the amplification of many of the trends we see today: polarization, nationalism, racism, and ultimately increased social unrest and conflicts. In short, we need a great reset.
First, I think it's very important to know that the COVID-19 pandemics just has accelerated certain trends which we had seen before and which actually were discussed in Davos this year, like the lack of inclusion, the lack of paying sufficient attention to the environment. So what we will see now is acceleration of those trends, and of course, a unique opportunity to reset our global agenda. So let's use this window of opportunity and let's recreate a global framework which really is in line with the requirements of a society in the 21st century.
We have a golden opportunity to seize something good from this crisis. Its unprecedented shockwaves may well make people more receptive to big visions of change, and global crises like pandemics and climate change know no borders and highlight just how interdependent we are as one people sharing one planet.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
So are you for or against genetically modified food?
Well, what our foundation is doing is we're working with partners. For example, DuPont Pioneer on some new maize things, with ADM on some cocoa growing things. Some of these are traditional breeding and some of them are transgenic. In parallel, we're also funding scientific expertise in Africa. So when 3 or 4 years from now, if things go as expected, there are some crops with big benefits, drought resistance, that the transgenic approach probably can do better than any other approach. The likelihood that the safety profile will be okay and then that will be beneficial, I hope that works out, because it is a tool, particularly for disease resistance, where you can put in a new gene called an RNA interference gene for a particular crop problem. It would be a real help. The good news is that the ability to make vaccines quickly, it may be possible to get that to be dramatically less than it's been. There's a new approach that is sometimes called DNA RNA vaccines, that the part you would change to go after a new disease would be a very small part of it. And so a lot of the work, the safety work, the manufacturing work, you could cut that out. You know, we don't know, are we going back to say 2,000 deaths a day like we were in April? That's hard to say. It's possible that we will. So 2020 is going to be a very tough year.
So the elevator pitch is test, contact trace, isolate and quarantine, and wear a mask, and role model wearing a mask. Every single person should be wearing a mask without exception.
We have to prepare for a more angry world, and how to prepare? It means to take the necessary action.
What we want to do in Davos this year in this respect is to push the reset button.
History would look at this crisis as the great opportunity for reset.
It is imperative that we reimagine, rebuild, redesign, reinvigorate, and rebalance our world.
And just like that, everything in the world is made right and pure again. The Great Reset. What could be simpler?
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. These are the words used by Charles Dickens to describe the world after the Industrial Revolution.
So here at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, the Chinese President Xi Jinping has just given the opening address. It's an astonishing moment, the first time a Chinese president has ever attended this forum, and by far the largest delegation that's ever come up here into the mountains. The content of the speech was quite interesting, but it's more the symbolism of this moment. You have the head of the Chinese Communist Party coming to the spiritual home of global capitalism, the annual Davos World Economic Forum, and he's here defending the liberal trading order and what he calls economic globalization. So at a time when politicians in the US and Europe, the President-elect Donald Trump, are questioning the value of globalization, questioning its benefits, you have China and the Chinese paramount leader coming here and defending it in a very robust manner. Also, very importantly, he said that the global governance system that is absolutely dominated by Western countries is no longer appropriate for a world where developing economies and developing markets like China are making up most of the global growth. So that was a really important moment where he said global governance structures need to be overhauled. And that was a direct message to his peers in Western countries.
In 2 days, there will be a new president of the United States. But there's be a new president of the United States. But the challenges we face and the choices we must make as an international community don't hinge exclusively on Washington leadership. Oh, it matters. I'm not suggesting Washington leadership does not matter. But it does not hinge exclusively on Washington leadership. Whether we reinforce the ties that bind us, or whether we unravel under the current pressures, these choices have to be made by every single nation.
We cannot predict completely the future. But change is not happening. We can shape change. We have to imagine the future. We have to design the future. What future do we really want? And then we have to explore the future.
If there's one message that I want to leave with you today, based on my experience, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak.
We have to mobilize all constituents of our global society to work together. We must not miss this unique window of opportunity.
The free world must embrace its national foundations. It must not attempt to erase them or replace them. Looking around and all over this large, magnificent planet, the truth is plain to see. If you want freedom, take pride in your country. If you want democracy, hold on to your sovereignty. And if you want peace, love your nation. Wise leaders always put the good of their own people and their own country first. The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots. The future belongs to sovereign and independent nations who protect their citizens, respect their neighbors, and honor the differences that make each country special and unique. It is why we in the United States have embarked on an exciting program of national renewal.
And so I say, well done to One Nation Senators Pauline Hanson and Malcolm Roberts for being concerned enough to raise this issue in our federal parliament where it should be raised and where it should be debated. Last week, Senator Hanson put forward a motion for the Australian Parliament to reject the Great Reset. Pretty simple, nothing to lose there. Just simply say, thanks, Klaus, but nein danke, it's not for us, and we won't be sending anyone to this year's World Economic Forum.
Only when governments put their own citizens first will people be fully invested in their national futures. In the United States, we are building an economy that works for everyone, restoring the bonds of love and loyalty that unite citizens and powers nations. Today, I hold up the American model as an example to the world of a working system of free enterprise that will produce the most benefits for the most people in the 21st century and beyond.
Well, Maurice Newman's an Australian businessman who served in a range of roles in public life and business. He's a former chairperson of the ABC and the Australian Stock Exchange and a former Chancellor of Macquarie University. He has written splendidly and informatively on this very issue, and he joins us tonight. Maurice, thank you for your time. You write that, quote, Donald Trump is and was an outsider. And as you say, whatever his critics at home and abroad say, his supporters, and there are millions of them, see him as a president who finally stood up for the United States of America.
Well, he's not a globalist, and all of the people who are opposed to him are globalists. They are the big tech, big media, the crony capitalists who are into renewable energy and all of those global type activities.
I mean, it's more than a coincidence, isn't it, that Biden underperformed Hillary Clinton in every state other than where the Democrats were administratively in charge and where there were significant electoral college votes available. Your words, the emergence of the shadows of a well-organised and powerful movement, largely aligned to the radical left, until Trump, you said, it had tolerated marginal political change, confident that control of the bureaucracy and the judiciary was an effective brake. Having failed to contain Trump, the left is determined under Biden administration to stack the Supreme Court with socialist judges. Look, everyone's writing to me, just a quick one, because we'll talk in the new year about this. Quick one to my viewers about what's called the Great Reset. Everyone's writing to me. Just a couple of thoughts on that.
Well, the Great Reset is going to be the segue from the pandemic. Now that they've got everybody obedient in terms of not leaving the house and doing what they have to do, and we've seen actions from the police in Victoria which are unthinkable in this country. So there's a segue from there into making sure that we control our emissions, that we do what we're told to do with regard to the great, what they call the Green New Deal, which essentially is to pursue policies which are going to be extremely expensive and draining on economic activity.
I think your words were a fascist experiment being pushed by controlling elites.
I don't think that's an exaggeration.
No, I don't think either.